What's up, everybody? We just got a bombshell ban list announcement. It's got all the makings of a ban list of all time. It came out early, surprised me by like 2 hours. We've got the elephant in the room. We've got the usual suspects. We got an Ojiro errata. Uh, we've even got a little bit of a rogue errata. So let's jump into it. Overall, let me say before we get into this, I'm very happy with this ban errata update. I think they did a good job of addressing the format, and most importantly, I'm always happy whenever anything changes. I like shakeups, and adding more cards to the card pool is probably the most organic way to do that when you don't think that there's any problems. But I do think there is some problems, and while we'll never address all of them, because whatever I think is a problem is someone else's favorite card or strategy, I am glad when there's a more hands-on approach. So first up, we've got the card erratas. We've got Ryuku. This is kind of the rogue errata to me. I don't think she was quite putting up the results that warranted a hit, but that's not the only reason to errata a character. So the old version was after you play any card with no abilities for any reason, you get to draw, add a card from hand to momentum. Now it's only on attacks. My only real beef with this is she is now weaker than she was on release. And I don't think erratas should, well, I guess it's kind of easy to say like anytime you nerf a character, but like her synergies with specific cards, like there's technically no reason to run her own zero diff now, right? There's technically no reason to run her own zero diff, and I don't like that. Like if you go back to her original kit, she has less use for the cards in her own kit, and that always feels like the wrong direction for an errata, to make a character not work with their own cards that they were designed with. But at the same time, the build with vertical maneuvering equipment was too strong. Ryukyu's were at almost 30-30 for blank cards. I think they got up to like 24, 28, something like that. And this set was gonna put them over half the deck. So I'm glad that something was done. This is the only one time where I think that a twice per turn on the response would have actually fit perfectly. It would have given you a clear metric of how much momentum and how much card draw she can get. It would allow you to still play all the blank cards to increase your odds of hitting those numbers. And realistically, I guess they really just want you to be able to attack 4 times and draw a card on all of those. But if you're attacking 4 or 5 times in Ryukyu, you're probably playing her 2-check, which isn't blank. So I don't really know. It seems it's a good move to limit the deck and still have like high rolly turns, but I feel like it takes away from the essence of the kit, which was obviously meant to also play the zero diff. But at the same time, there were no other blank foundations in standard at the time, so it's hard to say. It's hard to say how much she was really meant to work with foundations and on build turns and stuff anyways. So either way, I'm glad to see this one get hit, but it seems, I don't know, it seems like this is the one and only time I would be in favor of a twice per turn. I hate that errata and I don't like that design space. But the idea that she gets too much momentum, that is a way to limit it and still let her play whichever card she wants. So I don't know. Smiling Titan, this is probably the elephant in the room just because of the size, but also the Ojiro errata. So if you remember, Ojiro got speed and damage based on the zones in your card pool. Well, now Smiling Titan gets speed and Smiling Titan also got speed and damage. And then after the errata, Ojiro had to pick between speed or damage. Now Smiling Titan does as well. I think this is a really good errata because if you really want to play these big high difficulty pokes and get the refund from writing Smiling Titan, you can still put speed on these moves, and a lot of them are still really nasty. I think this makes Colossus Titan attacks much more fair. It was a 10 difficulty, 10 speed, 16 damage throw. So not only is it a throw for insane damage, it's also very difficult to block, and block with face shield on 13. And so now you can have a 6 speed, 16 damage throw, which seems fair and accurate, and you can have a 10 speed 10 damage throw, which is probably not what you're spending 10 difficulty on. So I like that this limits Smiling Titan, and I like that most people probably won't play Smiling anymore, just because whenever you errata a character, they feel weaker than before. It doesn't feel as good to play the deck. And so anything that gets people to stop playing Smiling Titan is an A+ in my book. But if you really like the strategy, you can play Mothra, right, and get bigger speed pump, or you can still play Smiling and have like that flexibility and that extra curve. It's just you might have to play one extra attack per game to hit people, and that is a big difference when you're talking like competitive turn counts. But I don't think it's that big of a deal if you want to go to your locals and play 4-check archetypal Smiling Titan, you know? If you're playing like an actual casual environment, they talk about here Smiling requires specific answers, and while that isn't a problem by default, you know, now it's less punishing when they don't find that, so you can have a bit better of like a casual game if your opponent's not running, you know, multiple capes and Genkais and things like that. And now they'll probably still get one more turn to find those tools. So I'm a big fan of this because I think Smiling can still like run that gambit against you, and at the same time, you know, Smiling can just play damage pump. You can just put foundations in your deck that do that. I promise, you know. Smiling Titan's really good at using Red Riot's the coolest, you know. Flip for +2 damage while committed. You'll get the same damage pump if you just build the deck right. But I digress. People will stop playing this character because it will require 1 iota of brain power to build the deck now, and they'll have to do something slightly different. And everyone will jump ship because she got errata. So I'm here for it. This is a good errata. I think the character is still playable. Our banned update has the usual suspects, Risky Encounter. This card does everything. This card does everything it needs to do. It's all in one. You need your rival to have a lot of foundations, and specifically more than you. And so that's cool because we get to sacrifice 3 to play this. But if I don't have foundations, how am I going to pass the check? That's cool. This is a 3 difficulty move. And you're saying, well, Sam, what if they don't build that many foundations? That's cool. It is still a 3 difficulty move with stun 1 on it. So if they don't build enough, you get to stun 1 and have a 4/4/3 diff. If they do build enough, you get to stun 1 still, you know, late in a string that's probably going to commit, you know, that one last foundation that is a reset or whatever. And it's going to swing for 10. And then on top of that, if you don't like it in your hand, it's got a +1 high block, and Death Attuned decks are the ones that play all the discard and draw. They play Latent Skill, they play Botan's Coaching. I've even had to discard this to sacrifice for the cause for +1 damage once. So there's plenty of ways to get this out of your hand. There's plenty of ways to mill this, and it did too much. What's wild to me is in the same set, we had a fair version of this card. This is a fair version of Risky Encounter, and no one will ever put this in a deck unless it's like a 1-attack gimmick deck where you need to conjure, you know, an attack to remove for whatever reason. Like, this is a 2-check that gets the same speed bonus, but now it's mid. It has no stun. It has no difficulty reduction, and you have to pick it up as a first form by sacrificing a foundation, which means it's almost certainly going to be ready. So this is an SR. This is a rare. This is not playable. You know, like, I guess sacrificing a foundation to tutor a mid block does have variable levels of usage, but it being a 2-check basically makes this card unplayable in my opinion. I don't know what they were afraid of, like a 1-attack deck that only plays short work. You're probably better off with a 1-attack deck that plays Risky Encounter. So I don't know. I would love to see this card get played. I've brewed with it quite a bit myself, but the 2-check never pans out. Destroying a ready foundation never pans out. The game's format's been too fast anyway, so maybe there's like some super late game busted ability where I get to, you know, sacrifice a ready foundation and break the game by having a 3 mid for 5 that sometimes gets faster. But, you know, it's just crazy that they were in the same set. And then Twisting Edge Inferno, we've got the pre-rotation ban. This is that Back Alley Haymaker ban, or not Back Alley. That was taking the hit for someone else. But we've had bans where they ban a card right before it rotates, and Twisting Azure Inferno was set to rotate pretty soon, I think, with the next set release. So it's nice to see that it won't be in Nationals format, it won't be in Worlds format, and it's kind of sad because I like the way both of these abilities are situated. They talk about the back and forth to get the damage pump was a fun tug of war. I agree with that. The issue is this response scales really, really, or it doesn't even scale, but it just triggers really well with the plethora of actions and, you know, the synergy with combined firepower, so you don't even need to be in your hand. What made this hard was having actions in your hand gunks up your hand. So Twisting Azure Inferno almost always saw success with characters that add an action to their hand, that tutor it. Now we're seeing success with every deck that can tutor actions from their discard pile, and it's 4 of them. So the issue is that the +1 to and -1 to the checks and the tug of war, I love. Response after you play an action, build a big +2 damage over and over attack. I love that. The issue really, and I wish that they talked about this a little bit in the article. It enables both strategies too well. You open your turn with a 17, 18 damage Twisting Azure Inferno, and you put all your combines in it, and your opponent, you know, you're putting whatever speed pumps you have in it, and your opponent's trying to fight over this, and they want to block it, they got to block it, and they got the -1 to their block. And now with that +1 to your checks, this effectively not counting towards the progressive, we now also get to play a big long string. And when you have 2 Twisting Azures, the string gets, you know, harder to block and easier to play, and you can spread out your combines and things like that. So my issue with Twisting was that it enabled both one big attack and string possibilities on the same attack. I don't think the decks where you're just using your character to give 3 damage and play a big long string were the most oppressive. You know, Younger Toguro was nuts with Twisting Azure Inferno because he just wanted to play that big long string and he put damage on all of them. He had kind of the same issue, right? Younger Toguro had every attack is big. Every attack is a 1 big attack, except they're not 1, it's 5, 6, 7 of them. So Twisting Azure Inferno enabling you to have 1 big giant attack that, you know, we saw Elder Toguro have a 1-hit combo with, like an almost, you know, infinite speed damage combo. It is really where it all breaks down. I wish that this was 2 separate attacks. I wish that there was an attack where you could brew my 1 big 30-30 sports festival stadium, and I wish that there was an attack that said, I get +1 to all my checks, you get -1 to all your checks, but they should be on different attacks. They should be, you know, maybe give the action one a different tug of war, but probably not. Make the tug of war the check bonus one, because a lot of the big string decks, you know, they're not really trying to play the stat game too hard. Like Mikasa would not, you know, Mikasa playing Twisting Azure was pretty tough to get this going, and she was like the best string deck on release. So like that just shows you how you could have a balanced version of this top ability, right? So I don't know. The tools available made the card too consistent. That is true. It became impossible to win the tug of war, or it would cost you so many resources it wasn't worth it. And being able to win the game earlier than possible with the check bonuses is all true. But it's just really sad that this was all too much on one attack, because it enabling you to go all in on this 1 big attack, and then also it's not really all in. Actually, I'm going to play 5 more attacks was really the issue with it. You know, Tokoyami's got this to like 10, 11 damage pretty easily, and you know, at the time it being 5 speed with -1 to your check was like insane, right, as an opener. So I'm a big fan of this ban errata list. Obviously, I would have liked to see like a Ghidorah touch or something out of the Rodan decks. I think they're just going to creep back up. Toga losing Risky is nice, but I think that combined firepower mill is probably going to be good enough to stick around. If it's not oppressive without Risky and without twisting, then I think we're in a good spot. So they did hit the combined firepower decks for the most part. I just know a lot of people want to see combined itself go. So I don't know. Let me know down in the comments below. Do you think that they stopped the main issue with combined firepower, or is there more cards that we need to ban? Are the challenger decks immune? Is it Rodan, Ghidorah, and combined firepower are just never going to get hit because they're in a challenger deck? Comment down below because it's YouTube and I need to ask you to like, share, and subscribe.